The following Four Aces production is for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is highly advised.
Yo, what's up, radio world? Welcome to this week's edition of the Cheap Pop Podcast. We're going to give this another go. Y'all don't really know that story, but we'll tell it to you a little later in the show. Right now, we have with us, of course, the one and only Alpha. What's up, Alpha?
My people, how are we doing? We failed last week's episode, right? So let's hit the mark this time.
Yeah, we had an epic fail on last week's episode. The epic fail was completely mine. I accidentally closed out of the Spreaker studio before we finished recording the episode, and I could upload it and everything. But yeah, so mistakes happen, things happen, but here we are, back again for your entertainment, and we have a special friend with us today, as Bray Wyatt would say. Speaking of him, he's on my TV screen right now. We have the one, the only Jaimel Hemphill, CEO. Creator, lead guy for NPC Comics. What's up, Jaimel?
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm just a lowly comic writer, man. No need for the titles, man. I just draw them.
Nah, that's just the way you run your business, which is how good business owners do. But the idea started with you, man. Like a long time ago, the idea started with you. But yeah. So all right. So tell us a little bit about NPC Comics, what y'all have going on over there, anything people might be wanting to keep their eyes out for.
Yeah, for sure, man. First of all, thanks for both of you for having me. Appreciate being here and everything. NPC is a creator-owned comic company. For those of you who out there like comic books, NPC is akin to Image, and that the company is owned by the creators that work for it. And also the only thing the company owns is its own logo. So much like Image, all the Image owns is the logo of Image. NPC just owns the logo. All the characters that you see coming out are owned by the people who created them. Our motto is comics for everyone. So what I like to say is that if you just like to read, chances are we make something for you, because we believe every book that we make should be a different genre. So whether you like horror, or you like mysteries, or you like science fiction, or you like superheroes, there should be something that we have in our lineup for you. Our newest books are Wax by Diane Huffman, which is like a coming-of-age magic story. And then I'll be doing a mini-series that is a buddy comedy called Sun Lar, which is about a drunken fry cook who gets superpowers, and now he's on a mission to get the largest shoe contract in history, and he has gotten his powers from an alien who is now stuck as a ghost that only he can see and hear. So it's a little bit of Quantum Leap, a little bit of Lethal Weapon, and a little bit of Greatest American Hero. Okay. So, yeah. Okay.
That sounds like something we need to check out. That sounds awesome.
Thanks, man.
No problem.
No doubt, I'm interested.
All right, man. So hustle and bustle. Being of working in the comic industry in general, what the one thing that everybody thinks is the fun part is, of course, they think is doing cons. So we kind of want to ask you to set the record straight. Is it truly that fun doing a con?
Well, it's a two things. So, and Alpha, Kevin may or may not have told you, and for the listeners, Kevin and I go back 20 years. Yeah. So, well, actually over 20 years. We're getting up there in age. So, yeah. I would say that in the late 90s when you're first doing them, they're super exciting. But there's a funny thing about conventions, and I think this is very important to mention. Like, people don't realize that when you draw comics or you write comics, like, it is an art form, right? It's just like music or comedy or acting or whatever. It's an art form, and I was just talking to a friend at my day job today. He's a musician. And I said, the big difference is that when you're a musician and you perform your music, the audience is right there in front of you enjoying it, right? If you're a comedian and you tell jokes, the audience is right there in front of you laughing, and you get to see them enjoying your art. With comics, you don't get that, right? Like I sit in a room, in a dark room, bent over a screen, and I draw, right? And then like a comic, if I'm lucky, the comic goes out and it goes to a store, and someone picks up that book at the store, and they read it and they enjoy it. But I never see that. Right. So do cons get tedious? Do they get boring? They are. They're tiring. But on the other hand, it's the only time that sometimes you get to see someone enjoy your artwork or your creation like right in front of you. Nice. So like you're sitting at a table and someone comes up and maybe they've never heard of you before, and they pick up this comic and they read it, and then you see them like react to a joke you wrote, or they like the art, or they dig it, and then they get it from you and they say, hey, I really like this. Like it's a totally different situation. So like it's like for a comic book artist, the cons can be tiring. Like I just had one this weekend that was not fun. Yeah. Like it was in Merced, which is Merced is about 150 miles outside of San Francisco. We had to wake up at 6 a.m, drive out to this place. We sat in a building that had no air conditioning. It was like 105 degrees, and like the convention didn't draw very much. So like there was maybe 500 people over the course of the day. So it just wasn't worth it, like monetarily. That's super tiring, right? Like that weighs down. But we sold a couple comics, and those people had never heard of us. So then there's that trade-off. Like I got to see someone enjoy my comic. Right. So I would say, are comics tedious? Are they tiring? Heck yeah. Like it is. Like you haven't lived until you like, especially when you're on like an independent level and maybe you still have a day job. Yeah. You know, where you're working 40, 50 hours a week, and then you leave work and you fly to New York, you know, just so you can get up jet lagged the next day to lug all your stuff into like a giant convention center and set up and then sit at a table for 10 hours before you go home and fall asleep. Like that, it's tiring. Yeah. But on an artistic level, sometimes it's satisfying because once again, you're kind of meeting people, and for once you get to get your art directly to them and see them react to it. So for me personally, sometimes that trade-off's worth it.
Yeah.
You know,
like it definitely on a different level than the reference I'm about to make. But podcasting to an extent kind of is kind of a similar thing. Is that you do this thing, you put it together and you think it's good enough for you to put out, but you don't necessarily even with seeing numbers tick up of people listening, you don't necessarily get to see a specific person's reaction to like say a joke you told or a way something went down or something you said, so on and so forth. You know, like with myself doing a lot of sports and wrestling, you know, we don't really get to see a lot of those reactions to people, to our hot takes on specific wrestlers, etc. You're
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're creating something and you don't get to see someone else experience it because it just goes out there, you know. So like, it's exactly the same thing.
Well, there we go. We got the tie-in, baby. Podcasting and comic books. There you go. Winner, chicken dinner. All right. So, Jaimel, I know that you are a fan as well as Alpha and I are of the kind of the DC comic universe as far as their TV world. Real quick thoughts before we dive into some of that. Your thoughts on the DC movie universe, because you've heard my thoughts over and over again. I don't even know if I don't even think I have broken down for you the article or the journal post that I wrote about how I would completely restructure DC Comics, like from top to bottom. I don't
remember. No, actually, I don't recall. I've heard your thoughts on DC, but I've never heard you say how you would fix it. No, I don't remember that.
Basically, I wrote an article. It was a journal post for my school a while back, and it was this post where basically they were like, pick any company that you consider to be like a failing company, and tell us how you would like rework the company to make it better. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. I just got done talking like, you know, DC versus Marvel, so on and so forth. I think with Kahari, I just got done. And I was like, I know exactly what I would do. I was like, the DC movie universe. I would start there. I was like, first and foremost, I know a lot of people don't have an issue with this thing, but I do. And since I was writing it for me, first thing I did was banish Zack Snyder from doing any DC movie ever. Okay. Then I said I would bring in Joss Whedon, and not in a directorial role, but more so to be the Kevin Feige of the guy that kind of oversees the overall universe. Then the first probably movie or two I would hand to Kevin Smith. I feel that he could do them justice. I feel he's the type of comic book fan you would want behind the thing. Not to say that there's not others that could do it well, but just trying to get away from the snagging everything from Marvel type situation. I'm like, okay, who can I use? And so I chose Kevin Smith as a starter. Maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I know he's looking at getting into producing, and he has a real eye for comic books as well. You know, and basically that's how I would start it. Then I would proceed to re-release. Like, basically, we would act like none of that stuff from before ever happened. And you start over. Okay. You start out, not the old Superman, not Christopher Reeve Superman, but everything like recent. Man of Steel and Sense. It just doesn't exist. You start out with a Superman movie. Then you give us a Batman movie. Then you forget all the side characters. You're dealing with your main characters now. You give us Superman, you give us a Batman, you maybe give us a Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Aquaman type things. Then you give us a team up movie. I know I've had that part of the discussion with you before about how DC should have given us the solo movies first, then the big team up movie of Justice League. But that was just running it through just that first phase.
Yeah. You know what the biggest mistake DC made, actually, to me, this is in my humble opinion, it was actually the Green Lantern movie. And I think I've mentioned this to you before. Ryan Reynolds was the perfect person to build an entire movie universe around. They just made him play the wrong character. If they had made Ryan Reynolds play the Flash, they would have been ahead of the game. Ryan Reynolds should have been the Flash. And then you would have had a perfect Wally West Flash, and then you could have built your universe out there. But they didn't do that. That's okay. I definitely agree with you on kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of they just missed the mark. The problem is Marvel did this like really heroic, bright, colorful thing, and that's what the DC comics usually are. Like the DC characters are really like old school, really heroic characters. You can't dirty them up really. Even Batman is not really like a murderous dude. You know, that's not how it works. He's a detective. And he's gotten like more and more dirty and grim as the 80s and the 90s have gone by. And I think Christopher Nolan kind of ruined it by making him like basically a gravelly voiced ninja instead of just being a detective, right? But if you gave me the DC universe and they're like, hey, start it over, I think you're right on the money in that you need a Kevin Feige. Like you need a guy who has overall vision. However, I wouldn't make it Joss Whedon. I would actually make it Paul Dini.
Okay.
Who was the guy? Paul Dini is the guy who oversaw Batman the Animated Series, then Superman, and then Justice League. Okay. So if Dwayne McDuffie has passed away, I would make it Dwayne McDuffie, but he's passed away, so I would make it Paul Dini. And then the movie that I would start with is the other thing is that DC has a way bigger universe than Marvel does. And what I would do is, in order to differentiate myself from Marvel, I would actually start with the Legion of Superheroes. Okay. I would start in the 30th century with all the Legion and just do a Legion of Superheroes movie. And that way you can introduce the concepts of all the characters you want to do while introducing this one property that no one's really paid attention to. So like the Legion is like a bunch of teenage superheroes in the 30th century, and they consider all the Marvel or DC heroes, they consider them legends, and they're just way in the future. And you've got all these crazy different characters like Matter Eating Lad and Bouncing Boy and Brainiac 5 and all these crazy characters. And it would be like Guardians of the Galaxy to the nth level. Okay. And it would just be completely different than anything Marvel's done. And the thing about the Legion is that eventually what happens is Superboy comes to the future and he teams up with the Legion. Okay. So what you would do is you would be able to introduce the Legion, and at the end of the first movie, you could have Superboy come and join the Legion. And then what you would do is he'd be there for one movie, and then you would do a sequel in which he helps the Legion stop a big bad in the future, and then he comes back to the past to become Superman. And that way you can introduce the Marvel or DC universe through Superman after that. But I would actually move away from any of the big seven. I would move away from the Justice League. I would move away from Darkseid, because like Darkseid and Thanos, they're not just copies of each other. They're literally the same character created by the same person.
Really?
Like Jack Kirby quit Marvel, went over to DC, invented the New Gods. Then he got sick of DC, came back to Marvel, and then remade the same characters that he had in New Gods at Marvel. And Darkseid is Thanos. They're the same character. So, like they're literally the same character created by the same person. So obviously, Jim Starlin got a hold of Thanos, and he added like a bunch of new stuff, but it's essentially the same character. So it's like, dude, throw that out. You can't use the Justice League because Marvel just did Avengers. You can't do it. Like, they're analogs. You can't use Darkseid, and you can't even really use the New Gods, because the Inhumans and the Eternals that are about to come out from Marvel, that's the New Gods. Those are the same characters.
Okay.
So it's like if that Eternals movie comes out before Ava DuVernay's New Gods movie, like, Eternals and New Gods are going to look like Armageddon and Deep Impact.
Yeah,
you know, like you know what I mean? Where
or London has fallen and whatchamacallit has fallen.
Yeah, it's going to look like, you know how you used to have those two movies, they come out like a year apart, but they have the same exact premise and they look really similar. Like, that's what it's going to look like. So if you gave me DC, I would get Paul Dini, who seems to understand these characters on a basic level, the same way Kevin Feige really understands the Marvel characters. He really gets it. And then I would actually start with some concept that is so uniquely DC that Marvel doesn't have an analog. And the most accessible thing they have that Marvel doesn't really have is the Legion of Superheroes. And it's a bunch of they've got like 50 characters. They can just pick 7 that are the most photogenic, and they're all teenagers, so you can get young, hot actors, right? Yep. And like get all these actors that are really popular with the kids or whatever, you know, they hit your demo, and you can just make this movie. It'll be like BTS in the theater, you know. So like that's what I would do.
Well, go ahead. Well, have you watched the most recent the 2 seasons of Supergirl since they've been on CW?
Yeah. They just barely scratched the surface.
I was gonna say, but that Brainiac is supposed to be the Brainiac from Legion, right? Because he keeps talking about the Legion.
He is.
Okay.
Yeah. They all have the flight rings with the little L's and whatnot. Yeah, that's the Legion, and Mon-El is part of the Legion.
Okay.
Saturn Girl. Those are 3 of the Legionnaires. And the Brainiac on Legion is actually the descendant of the evil Brainiac that fights Superman. He's Brainiac 5. Okay. So, those are legitimately the part of the Legion, but usually they roll deep. I think they're rebooting the Legion right now in the comics, and you'll see that I think it's Superman number 15 is coming out this week, and there's Superboy in that book, so the Legion is coming to recruit him. And so, the Legion shows up, and they're like 30 deep. Like, the Legion is literally a legion of superheroes. So with a movie budget, you could have 30 heroes, and you just introduce 5 main ones for exposition and for the audience to see everything through. But if you wanted to I think DC's problem, we can all agree, is that they tried to have Avengers right off the bat, right?
Mm-hmm.
They went and tried to have what Marvel took 10 years to build. They tried to have it in the first 2 movies.
Yeah.
So realistically, what Marvel wants is they're not trying to give you the Avengers. What they're trying to give you is what we call a splash page. You know, one of those big pages in the comics, you open it up and it's like a double page spread and all the heroes are fighting, right? That's what Marvel wants to give you. With Civil War, right? We got 10 people running at each other. And then Infinity War, we got that huge battle and thing. And then finally in Endgame, we got Avengers Assemble, and all the heroes are running, and you've been waiting 20 movies to see that, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to skip all over that, right, but do it with DC and give that scene without having to throw 15 heroes in your face that all should have their own movies.
Yeah.
Just do the Legion. You could have that scene right off the bat. Right? Like you have a bad guy on one side, you just have the Legion run at him. And it doesn't matter that you don't know who 50 of them are. You just want to get the scene. Yep. So like they could have totally gotten what they wanted if they started with the Legion. And then, like I said, you introduce all these new characters, you exploit a property, kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy, where no one gives a crap who the Guardians are.
Right.
Like no one. That's a Z-list property. And none of the people who were in the movie, none of those characters are actually in the Guardians in the comic. Like that was a whole new team just made up using the name. And none of those characters are, until now. Like now the comic matches the movie, but until that point, the Guardians are just some throwaway characters. So with the Legion, there's so many different Legionnaires that you can just throw away if you don't want to use, or you could take liberties with them and not have people complaining that you're like, oh, this isn't. Like, Superman doesn't snap necks. Like, I have a legitimate beef with that. But guess what? If you take some character that I've never really read and make them snap a neck, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I care if Superman snaps a neck. I don't care if Bouncing or Matter Eating Lad snaps a neck. I don't know anything about Matter Eating Lad. Let him snap the neck. You know? So you could tell all the stories you want and take all kinds of liberties to just focus on making a good movie with the Legionnaires. You can just take 4 or 5 of them and focus on those, and then you can get the big splashy scene, and you know, and then you throw Superboy in there. And not only that, it's like Spider-Man. You get to hire a guy who's only maybe 19 or 20 to play Superboy, and now you've got your Superman locked in for the next 15 years. Mm-hmm. You know, and then he comes. Then you do a movie where he comes back and becomes Superman. He can do a movie or 2 as Superboy with the Legion, and then you have him come back as Superman. And now you've literally got enough time for him to do a whole trilogy of Superman, and you can build your modern day DC pantheon, whatever, around that actor.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah. So like
that,
if you
gives enough time for people to forget about this debacle of a run over the past like 6-8 years. Like it really does. It gives time for people to be reintroduced to DC without you know, with all these different characters, while giving that distance before you reintroduce the main characters that everybody wants to see, and it kind of wipes. It's kind of like it's kind of like that scene in Deadpool when Ryan Reynolds shoots himself while he's reading the Green Lantern script. But yeah, and just kind of wipes it, you know, wipes it out of existence. But yeah, I feel what you're saying. I definitely do.
Yeah.
But okay, so you know that this year's crossover. Now, mind you, the crossovers throughout the past 4 years for CW have been amazing. Well done.
They've been spectacular. I've really enjoyed them.
You know, and I've made the comment. I make the comment every year when watching it. Why can't DC just use the same writers that they use for the crossovers and for the TV shows, just on the movies? But I guess ain't nobody hearing that. But yeah. So like this year they're tackling what has to be basically their most ambitious crossover yet in covering Crisis on Infinite Earths. To me it's basically like their Infinity Saga, like except it's gonna be over what, like 6 nights or 3 nights? Because I
believe it's over 5. I think it's 6 nights and 5 of the shows. 5 out of 6 of the shows.
Okay. Well, okay. Now, did they ever? I've seen 2 different articles. I saw one that was from like a year or so ago, where they said that Black Lightning wasn't going to be a part of Crisis, and then I read another one that was from more recent, where they said one of the directors said that Black Lightning is going to be a part of the Crisis. So, what have you heard?
I believe that the characters will be in the show. The characters will be part of the crossover. I think you'll definitely see the characters. However, there will not be a 1-hour section of the story that takes place in the Black Lightning time slot. Okay, if that makes sense. No, so Black Lightning, the show is not going to cross. It's not going to cross over, but the characters will be in there. I think what this is, the bottom line is what happened is we ended up with, the only reason we have multiple universes is because at first Supergirl was on CW. That's it. The logistics, CBS, excuse me. Yeah, thank you. So because Supergirl was on CBS, obviously the logistics, even though they had the same producers and some of the same writers on both shows, it did not film anywhere near Flash. It did not film anywhere near Arrow. It airs on a different night, and the broadcast rights, the way that works, it makes it logistically impossible for the shows to cross over, right, unless you do it like once a year. So they managed, because he's on the same producer. That took a lot of doing just to get Barry Allen or what's the guy's name, but to get him to show up on Grant Justine, to get him on CW or CBS, it took a lot of doing. Yeah. So we're going to make sure that we're going to explain why this doesn't happen all the time. So we're going to say they're on a different universe because it's on this other network.
Gotcha.
The moment it moves over to CW, you have to remember they pretty much moved to the same lot as Flash. Yeah. So now Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl are all filming on the same lot. So that changes everything. So now they can have crossovers, but they've written themselves into a corner by saying they're on different universes. So I think what's going to happen is the big deal here is the comics are going to have a big impact on the show. And I think when this is all said and done, all the characters will be able to interact. I think we're going to end up with one universe, just like the comics did. Crisis is known for simplifying the DC storylines. Up until the point, this was a 12-issue miniseries that came out in the early 80s. And up until that point, you had multiple Superman, you had multiple Batman and all that. So they would say, hey, the Superman who existed in the 50s, he's on this planet. And the Superman who existed in the 60s on this planet. And now you have the Superman that you're reading now. They all exist, but the Superman who crash landed in the 1930s, that's a totally different Superman than the guy you're reading now. This guy landed in the 70s. So it got confusing for new readers because fans are nitpicky, much like wrestling fans or any other fans. Yeah. They wanted one cohesive story. So they wrote this Crisis to merge everything and try to give you a single timeline in order to make sense of everything that it came before. So I think we'll see a lot of that in these shows. I think we'll see a lot of simplification. I think we'll see some timeline shifting so everything lines up and it makes one cohesive story. And I think going forward, we'll see a much more cohesive universe between the shows.
And I think that'll benefit everybody that watches. Like these are shows that everybody enjoys. You know, it's time to have them all on the same timeline. All right, so looking back through this most recent season of some of these shows, Black Lightning, to me, and it was another. I was explaining to John when we last recorded the episode or this episode, the character Tattooed Man. And just how exactly, to me at least, how dope of a character that is. In general, you have this dude who's killed a bunch of people, and every person that he kills ends up as a tattoo on his body, and a ghost chasing him. Like that to me was just like so deep. Like it was like, okay, y'all got me. Like once again, it showed to me the extent of how good DC writers can be. You know, because here you have this DC, brand new property.
Yeah, DC has a lot of deep cuts. Like, you have to remember, what most people don't think about is that Marvel, like, they have about 9,000 characters that they've made in their, 80-year history. But Marvel has always just been Marvel. They were Timely, and then they were Atlas, I believe, and then they became Marvel Comics. But whatever they've made in-house. However, DC... they're a little bit older, and they came through a time in which they actively had to knock out the competition. So DC doesn't just have the characters they've created; they have characters from companies they've actually purchased.
Wow!
So they've got a lot. They've got a way deeper roster, and it's like you just said, it's a real shame that they don't have a person who loves their stuff as much as Kevin Feige loves Marvel. Because they have a really deep roster. So, for instance, like Shazam or Captain Marvel is not a DC character.
Yeah,
that's not a DC character. That's a Wiz Comics character. And so, Shazam for a little bit was actually more popular than Superman.
Wow.
Like every Superman came out, so everybody's like, oh, we're gonna put a strong guy in a costume because they're making oodles of money. So Shazam came out. from Wiz Comics, and so he's a ripoff of Superman.
Yeah.
They just changed how he got his powers, but he's Superman, and he was way more popular, and so DC tied him up in court, which made them stop publishing the character long enough for them to be financially weak. They went out of business, and as soon as they went out of business, DC bought the rights to all their stuff.
Damn.
So so they did that with a couple characters, like the Question and Blue Beetle and everything that comes from Charlton Comics. They did that a couple times. So they have that's why they have characters that are much are really similar to each other. For instance, even the Milestone characters, right? Icon, Shazam, Superman, they're all the same person. So
well,
yeah,
damn.
so they've got Tattoo Man is one of those. I think he's one of those bought characters, but still, they've got a really deep
roster,
deep bench of characters. Yeah,
and it's just sad, like you said. I think the saddest part about it is the whole fact of the fact that they don't have somebody at the helm that understands, appreciates, and loves those characters enough to put the meticulous thought into how they're depicted. When they're depicted and who should be depicted. At that point. Last thought before we wrap this segment up here. Sony, Marvel, ding ding.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. That's rough, man. I see it from both sides. I don't mean to pull a president here, but I see it from both sides. Here's what Sony sees. All right, we didn't do too well with Superman, but now Marvel has rehabilitated the character. We made Venom. Venom made $700 million. All right, so we don't need Marvel anymore. We got Venom, and we got a rehabilitated Spider-Man. Everybody loves Tobey Maguire. I mean, what's the new kid's name?
Holland.
Tom Holland. Yeah, everybody loves Tom Holland. He's the most popular thing since Tobey Maguire. We got Eddie Brock. We got the Venom. Everybody loves Venom. I don't know what Sony's obsession with Venom is, but they want him in every movie. So we've got Venom. We've got Spider-Man. We'll just mash them together. We'll make a couple other movies with villains, and then we'll have that Sinister Six movie that we've been wanting since 2004. Okay. That's what they're thinking. All right. Okay. All right. Marvel's like, okay, we just want all our characters. We're willing to share with you. And most people point out, everybody's angry at Marvel for asking for a cut of the movie. What I see people fail to mention, though, is that right there in the article, Marvel also offered to pony up half the cost of making the movie.
Right.
So Marvel's offer was a split down the middle. They didn't say, yo, break us off more money. They were like, we'll put more money in. Now, what I think the stickler is, Marvel, the original deal is that Marvel got the merchandising rights. They had, the deal was Marvel will make the movie. We'll do all the work. All you do, Sony, is put up the money. We'll make the movie for you. We'll take an itty bitty cut of the movie's box office profits, but we get all the merchandising rights. And that's where the money is. I think if Marvel would get them part of those merchandising rights, we wouldn't even be talking right now.
It would be
that's what it is. Yeah, exactly. People want those merchandising rights. George Lucas, he is a billionaire because he had the merchandising rights. When he sold Star Wars to 20th Century Fox, he was like, "Cool, I'll sell you the movie, but then you need to let me keep all the money I make off toys." And they were like, "Okay, whatever.
Toys, yeah, whatever.
Go ahead. Yeah, you want to make toys out of your little star? You want to make toys out of your little sci-fi movie? Okay, we'll put your little sci-fi movie out. You keep whatever you can make." And then, 5 years later, he's a billionaire. Yeah. So, and it's been that way ever since, So, I think that was the stickler. I think if Marvel even said, "Hey, we'll split everything down the middle, and we'll give you 10% of the merchandising money," this wouldn't even be a conversation. I think the greed came from, we want to split everything with you, but we're not going to share the merchandising rights. Yeah, but I think it's bad news anyway. I think Sony's going to fail. And the most important thing to remember is that the Spider-Man rights are not transferable. So if Sony sells off their movie studio, Marvel gets the rights back. And if Spider-Man flops, Sony's going to have to sell their movie studio. Like all they have is James Bond and Spider-Man. That's it.
But like
And
we've had all this amazing setup by Marvel, like Far From Home and Homecoming were amazing movies, and they were setting up all this stuff, and now it's just gone. Like, I think that's the main thing. I think if this had happened before Sony or before Marvel ever put out a Spider-Man movie, like maybe he just makes the appearance in Civil War and then this happens, I honestly don't think there's as much backlash against Sony. I think a lot of the anger towards Sony right now is coming from, dude, like, did you see what they've set up? Like, that was amazing. Like, and then you want to take this away from us? Like, I think that's where
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just saying there's a fantastic Spider-Man story that, knowing Kevin Feige, I know exactly where they were going. There's a story where Spider-Man gets outed, and until he comes out with 4 different identities that each use part of his power. Oh, I think that's where they were going to go with it, and I would have loved to seen it. But you have to understand that Spider-Man or Marvel has one good thing about Marvel is they have a lot of entry-level teenage superheroes.
Yeah. So
Sony can take Spider-Man all they want. Spider-Man is probably probably the 4th most popular character on the planet, right? I understand it's a huge loss, but they've got Ms. Marvel, they've got Nova, they've got there's like at least 3 or 4 other characters that could take the Spider-Man role as the teenage kid who's a superhero, street level. There's at least 4 other heroes that could take the place of Spider-Man. Yeah. There's actually a character, one of my personal favorites, named Speedball. He was created by Steve Ditko, the guy who created the Spider-Man costume. He's like the perfect replacement for Spider-Man. They've got Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, who already is going to get a Disney Plus show, and they've said she's going to move on to the movies after her series. Yeah, flat out. Kamala Khan is like the new Peter Parker. Yeah. So there's Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Do we
even know what the next movie is that's due out?
It'll probably be Black Widow.
Okay.
I think that's next on the docket, and then after Black Widow, we'll know we're getting Shang-Chi and the Eternals. I know those are on the docket. And
so it'd be a while before we got back to Spider-Man anyway. It would have been a while before we got back to him anyway.
I mean, we would have still got the Spider. So the thing about the Spider-Man movies is, remember, Sony is still in charge of them, even though Marvel handles, making them. So Marvel had no control over the release of those. Sony decided when those movies came out, which is why I think that might have. I know Kevin Feige was annoyed because you notice they didn't announce or advertise anything until after Endgame came out.
Right.
Like they didn't say anything. But you knew Spider-Man Far From Home was coming out, and you knew everything that was going to happen because that was Sony spoiling it. Like if it had been up to Marvel, you'd have never even heard anything about Spider-Man Far From Home because they were trying to literally say, "Hey, we don't know if anybody's alive."
Yeah.
Right. So like it was Sony spoiling it. So we would have probably still got a Spider-Man movie like sometime around 2021, and I think we'll still get a Spider-Man movie around 2021, and that was going to happen no matter what Marvel said. Because Sony's the one. And once again, always follow the money. Sony survives, their movie studio at least, survives through James Bond and Spider-Man. Those are the 2 tentpole franchises. Much like Disney makes all their movie off Marvel, they make their money off the Star Wars, and they make their money off Pixar, right? That's what props Disney up. What props Sony up is Spider-Man and James Bond. And James Bond, although the last couple of movies have been good, it's not the franchise it was, and then you got Spider-Man. They need Spider-Man to work. If they screw up and the Spider-Man flops, Sony is going to sell off its movie division. And then Marvel wins anyway because they'll get Spider-Man rights back.
Well, I hope that happens sooner than later because, like I said, I hate to see that big old build-up for blah, blah, for nothing. All right, so
well,
go ahead.
Nothing. I was just going to say I hope as long as Disney doesn't buy the Sony studio. I'd rather see someone else buy Sony Studios because Disney owns just way too much right now. They just own way too much. I want to see him get Spider-Man back, but I really wouldn't want Sony to get a hold of James Bond as well. That's just crazy. These guys already own The Simpsons. They own Terminator. They own everything, so.
Oh man. All right. So we'll get in. We'll get off of that for a quick second and take a quick commercial break. We'll come back and talk a little Clash of Champions and kind of what's going on currently in the wrestling world. Still talking here with Mr. Hemphill, Jaimel Hemphill of NPC Comics. And yeah, you didn't hear him much during that segment, but Alpha's still here with us.
I'm still here. Yes, sir.
So when we come back, we'll all be talking a lot of wrestling right here on the Cheap Pop Podcast, Voices Presents Radio Network, Spreaker.com.
From the galactic depths of the comic book universe comes the ghosts of the stratosphere, ready to galvanize and energize your mind with the latest of comic book news and reviews. And why are you stopping me? Yes, that's much better. Hi, this is Andy Larson for Ghosts of the Stratosphere. Join me every week along with my co-hosts Rob Stewart and Chad Smith, as well as a cavalcade of fantastic comic book guests as we dish out heaping helpings of the greatest and latest of comic book news and reviews. New shows posted every Tuesday with bonus shows every first Friday of the month. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher under Ghosts of the Stratosphere, as well as on our website, www.gotstratosphere.com. Hope to see you soon, folks.
Game ticket, $50. Hot dog, $8. Team store item, $25.
I told him I can beat him with one hand tied behind my back, with some glasses on, with one eyelids out, with some flip-flops on in the ring.
Haven't you listened to someone's dumb sports opinions? Worthless. Some people shouldn't talk sports. For everyone else, there's the Unspoken Podcast, available on most podcasting platforms, and on the web at theunspokensportspodcast.weebly.com.
Hello, Radio World. This is K-Double here to let you know about KD5P, K-Double's fifth period music class, a bi-weekly music show here on the 4H's Presents Radio Network, where every other Friday night at 8, I take you on a musical journey through the careers of some of your favorite musical artists. So check me out on Spreaker.com/4Aces Presents Radio or on iHeartRadio every other Friday at 8 p.m. on Revolving Door episodes. Peace. KD5P.
All right, and we are back from commercial break. And just one quick thing. I just want to let people know, quick spoiler alert. It saddens me to bring you this news from the 5 o'clock edition, the live edition of Monday Night Raw. Unfortunately, for those of us who like wrestling, it pains me to say this. Baron Corbin has won the King of the Ring contest. And now we will be proceeded to have to deal with him coming out and mentioning that he's King of the Ring for the rest of his days wrestling, which hopefully won't be long.
King Corbin, baby.
Yeah, we have King Corbin. Another disappointing note off of tonight's Monday Night Raw is that it shows once again another slap in the face to how stupid the WWE writers feel that the WWE, even Paulie dangerously, thinks that the WWE universe is. They're pretty much running the exact same gimmick with Authors of Pain to bring them back into WWE universe that they just got done running with Aleister Black and are kind of still running on SmackDown with Aleister Black. They're basically sitting back in a back room in some suits talking about how nobody wants to fight them.
All right, look, we're like every day we stray a little bit closer to 2000s WCW, and I'm not liking this.
That's actually a pretty solid reference there. Oh man, but yeah, no, I just noticed. I just saw the segment like as we were talking. I was sitting there, I look over, I'm like, oh look, Authors of Pain, and then I'm reading the caption on what they're talking about. I'm like, basically cutting the exact same promo Aleister Black did about a couple months ago. Yep, y'all think we're dumb. Anyway, but that all being said, gentlemen, we all know last night was the big night for WWE, Clash of Champions. Every championship was defended. Most of them, I would say, most of them retained. A lot of them changed hands, but we'll get to some of the results in a little bit. Overall, the Clash of Champions pay-per-view was a pretty good one. The storylines that were built up for it were pretty good, especially the Bayley heel turn. So we'll kind of start there. She had her match against Charlotte, which she retained in classic heel fashion of not necessarily as the good girl. She didn't get the clean win, but she got the win just the same. Jaimel, why don't you kick us off with this? Your thoughts on Bayley's heel turn and the fact that it looks like they're going to continue to run with her as champ.
Yeah, I really like it. The one thing I noticed looking at the replays and stuff is that they still have the wacky inflatable tube men and everything. Mm-hmm. And I want to see what they do with that. I like the idea of having a heel who has such a her gimmick when she came out. It's such a face gimmick, right? She's a hugger and all that stuff, and she's got the Bayley to belly, and she's just like this really friendly person. So I love the effect. I love like turning someone heel and then changing nothing about that gimmick. Mm-hmm. Like I like the idea. Like I would love for her to just be an a-hole and still try to hug people. Like you know what I mean? Like that's like. If you have a good gimmick, like her gimmick is great and it's over, right? So there's nothing better than the person who doesn't realize they're a heel, right? Like just doing dirty stuff and then still acting like what? I'm the same person. Like, give me a hug. Like, I think that would be a great way to go. I'm kind of hoping they do that. I don't think they will, but I'm looking forward to see what they do. Well, I just think Bayley's talented, so we'll see what happens.
Well, I don't know if you saw her promo on SmackDown the day after the initial turn, but basically that was similar to what they're doing with her. Like she was just like, what y'all didn't think I was going to be loyal to my friend? Like what? Yeah. Like, yeah, I'm still Bayley. Like I'm still the same Bayley I was yesterday. Y'all are saying what changed? Nothing changed. I'm still Bayley. I'm just loyal to my friend. like this is what y'all. She's like, I'm trying to be a role model for your kids so that they can see that it's a good thing to be loyal to your friends. And I was just like, I don't know why, but I'm eating up every minute of this. Like, I love it. I love the whole attitude, the whole feel. Alpha, your thoughts?
I'm in the same boat as Jaimel. It's my favorite thing when heels are done a little bit differently than usual, and it reminds me of what Sami Zayn did a little bit ago. If you remember a while back when he first turned heel and started siding with Kevin Owens, they were heels through and through, but rather than like changing Sami any bit, they just made him dance harder on his way to the ring.
Yeah.
So instead of the Sami Zayn jig, the smile that everybody loved, it was less of like really wholesome and enjoyable and more of just downright fucking terrifying and maniacal.
Yeah, it is.
Like that's what I think they're going for with Bayley being a heel, but still, having the little inflatable tube men and hugging people down to the ring. I'm hoping they'll do something like that at least, because I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Because Sami Zayn just went hard and he would fucking flail like an animal on his way down to the ring. It was the best thing to see while Kevin Owens remained completely emotionless and stalwart.
Kevin Owens.
I like it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, let me give you Kevin. You were speaking of Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens gave me recently one of those things where I guess in general, I guess I saw it from both sides. I wanted the King of the Ring to kind of be his moment because they had gotten so hot with the feud with him and Shane. I was like, ooh, yeah, King of the Ring, this is going to be his moment. He's going to kind of have his little Austin 316 moment and da-da-da-da. But then I began to think about it now that I'm stuck with King Corbin, that you can't really recreate that Austin 316 moment with King of the Ring. Like, you can't. Like, that was just a once-in-a-lifetime moment that just kind of happened, and Steve Austin just happened to be in the right place for it, and it worked. It got him, like, super over. You know, he was already over going into the match, but him winning that and that promo kind of put him over the top. So I kind of let go of that.
Can I ask you guys?
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys a question? You guys may know this, and this is maybe something I missed, but I seem to recall reading a couple articles about how they were going to stop scripting the promos, and they were going to start letting wrestlers. Yeah. So to your point, Kev, this is a point I made talking with some friends. You cannot create iconic wrestlers through writing. You just can't. The greatest promos are riffs on the actual personalities of the wrestler. So the people some people have what's called it or whatever, and some people don't. And the best promos are the people with it allowed to manipulate the audience with their words without a script. Right. Like the Hard Times promo from Dusty Rhodes, the Austin 316 promo from Stone Cold. You know, the Rock, going from Rock Maivia to The Rock was them just taking Dwayne Johnson and turning him up to 11. So as opposed to you being spoon-fed down somebody's throat, they're like, just be yourself.
Yeah. Here's
some talking points. Just be yourself. So I think as long as we have people writing scripts, word-for-word scripts for Raw and SmackDown, I don't think you're going to have any of those moments.
Yeah.
But I think if they do away with the promo scripts and just give them talking points, I think we will get one of those moments, but it may not come from one of the people you want to see.
And so, you know, I was going to say, I can agree with that 100%, because the more I think about it is like this, is to an extent they've handicapped their wrestlers. And what I mean by that is by writing scripts for them and forcing them to read it, not only have they driven wrestlers like Jon Moxley out of the company, you know, with some of the things that they wanted him to say and do, but they've also, to a point, handicapped their wrestlers, because to me, promos, I'm not a wrestler. I've never done a promo class. I've never cut a promo, you know, but to me, like, promos are like talking shit. Basically, when you're talking shit to somebody right before you get into a fight, okay, telling them what you're going to do, so on and so forth. Like you say, some people have it. Some people don't. But I think you'll never find out if somebody has it unless you let them attempt to go out there with a live mic and do their best, which is a dangerous concept for WWE because Vince so much wants to control everything that's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like I hate to bring it back around to him, but like I think it would be hard for WWE to just go on ahead and say, okay, you know what, guys, just go do your best. Because a lot of these guys have been scripted since they were in NXT. And so,
well, they're also a corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're also a corporation. So like they have to, like, you know, you're investing money into creating stars, and this is a corporation that is betting on certain stars. So like, if you don't want Dolph Ziggler to be the champion, but all of a sudden he cuts the best promo, you got an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened with Daniel Bryan, right? He's completely over, but he's not the guy they want representing the company, but he's the one getting over. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I don't presume to have any more knowledge than you do or anything like that. But you think about it from a business standpoint, when you're investing money in creating star A, but they're just not cutting it, and then star B is blown out of the water, but that's not the guy that you want. That's not the guy you want to represent your brand.
Yeah.
It can create an issue.
And I wonder if that's a little bit of what they have going on right now with Strowman and any major championship outside of the tag team championship, because the man's been hot, like white hot fire on multiple occasions, including recently rolling in the Clash of Champions, but yet he still cannot seem to get a hold of a singles belt. He can't seem to get a hold of the U.S. title. Rollins defeated him for the Universal title, and I, for one, thought it was his time. And so maybe that's a little bit of what's going on there. Maybe like Strowman's just not the guy that they want representing the company right now, even though he's white hot in the wrestling world. Alpha, your thoughts
on Braun Strowman?
Well, yeah, on what they're doing with Strowman right now.
Okay. As per usual, I completely abhor what they're doing with him right now. Because at the end of the day, it's like you look back a few years ago, and where was he at? He was, I'd say, on top of the wrestling world for a minute. Yeah. Every reaction that he got was wildfire. Everything he did, it was adored by the internet wrestling community, even to the casual fans. It was fucking insane when he was at the top of the wrestling world. And now you look at it and it's like he's relegated to a tag match with somebody who's already holding a belt, which is its own problem.
Yeah. and yeah.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think it sucks most because I think like Braun has like, I don't know how to say it, but I could say he's what he looks like everything the WWE would be pushing. Like he has it all in terms of the perfect WWE style. You know, he's out there, he's massive, he's a character. You can really build something on that, and I'm surprised they haven't built something more off of that already.
It seems to be that they like the small guy nowadays. The same way that back in the days of Hogan and Triple H and all that, the title always seemed to go to the big buff guy. It's now it seems to go to the smaller buff guy. Like the big guys, like Big Show and them, they don't dominate the way they used to. They aren't written to dominate the way that they used to in the past. You know, like guys like Show and Taker and Kane, they didn't lose back in the day. And when they did, it was a rarity. You know, now you see guys like Strowman, he'll go on like a month or two, but then when it comes to that match that matters, he loses. And
never forget that, like, one of the few people who holds a clean win over Braun Strowman is Kalisto. Never forget.
Little Kalisto. Well, another great match and a great storyline, the way it was built, the way everything went down. And partially, I give a lot of credit on that to Randy Orton. Randy Orton has become, in his old sage age of what, he's in his late 40s. Like, I want to say he's like 41, 42 or early 40s, like 41, 42, somewhere around there, 44.
Yeah.
He's learned how to tell a story. He's learned how to spin a yarn. Inside and out of a wrestling ring. And this feud that he's had recently with Kofi Kingston has been one of his better works, including that match at Clash of Champions. Like, Kingston needed somebody. Well, Samoa Joe was a real threat, but WWE just keeps letting me down with Samoa Joe. He's going to be another one of those greats that never really saw the success he should have seen in WWE. As far as championships, etc. But Orton was on a different level of threat to Kofi Kingston, and I enjoyed every bit of it. You know, all the way up to the match. And if you haven't seen the match, go check out the match. It was really one of the best of Clash of Champions. But Jaimel, I'll ask you this question: the thoughts on kind of what it takes to be able to do that well, to be able to tell a story like that as a wrestler?
Well, I think it just comes from experience. Randy Orton is a third-generation wrestler. I don't know if he was like The Rock, where he didn't really want to wrestle until he came in. I know that he went to the military and came out. But he has a discipline, and it comes with learning how to take your time. Obviously, I've never been at the level that these guys are at or anything, but I think telling the story is always the same. And it's at their level. Obviously, there's a lot of planning goes on, and you've got to be aware of the cameras, and there's the road agent telling you what to do, move to move. But once you're in the ring and you're applying those moves and you're going through the spots that have been given you, being aware of the crowd and learning how to play off that emotion, I think, if anything, that's the biggest difference between Randy Orton wrestling now and Randy Orton wrestling in like 2003. Because you have to learn how to take your time and feed off the crowd and learn how to milk things for what they're worth. If you notice, like, he's still just as agile, to me at least, at a cursory glance, he's still just as agile and athletic and yoked as he was before. He's just got more tattoos, right? Yep. But if you notice, he wrestles a bit slower. He's almost like Cody Runnels, and that how he takes his time between moves, and you may not see a bunch of high spots where there's not a lot of slams or whatnot. It's mostly strikes, but he milks them and times them and plays to the camera and plays to the audience. And it's the way he does things and the way he's meticulous in how he's telling the story that is way different than, say, a decade ago. And I think that comes with just learning. I think every single wrestler goes through that. You know, not all of us can be the Young Bucks where we're just like spot monkeys. Like, right? That's their thing. They go out and they do high spot after high spot after high spot. That's their thing, and it's awesome, right? But I think when you talk about people learning how to tell a story, they tend to slow down. And it's not age that does it. It's comfort and realizing that you don't have to, like, stack everything in to make people go, wow. You know, you can build up anticipation and tell a story that way and build up suspense. And so I think you notice that with a lot of people. They're like, sometimes we get sick of seeing punches and kicks, especially when it's supposed to be a quote-unquote wrestling match. Yeah. But you'll notice some of the best wrestling matches, if you go back and actually look at them, they have a couple of exchanges, but then there's just the suspense. There's the punches and kicks and strikes and maybe a rest hold or two that build up to the spot that does a really good wrestling exchange. So I think whether you're looking at Cody, whether you're looking at Randy Orton, whether you're even looking at Triple H or somebody or any, you know, one of those guys, like, just look at, like, them at the beginning and look at them like 5 years in, and that's what you'll see. And then the people that are hailed as really, really good wrestlers, like a Daniel Bryan or a Spanky or I don't know, just somebody who's considered a prodigy or something. Mm-hmm. Go back and look. It's just that they learned that earlier. They took their time earlier. That's the only difference, at least in my opinion.
Fair enough. Alpha, your thoughts on the Orton Kingston match?
Like most matches on the card, this match specifically, like, it really came out of left field for me. Because going into this, looking at just the match card, it wasn't something that I was really too hyped about, if I'm being honest. It didn't really pop out to me. But if we talk about the other matches, I'll get into that more. But basically, every match on the card really surprised me, but especially this match. Personally, I'm not too big of a fan of Randy Orton. I don't hate him. But like you mentioned, Randy Orton runs a really, really slow and methodical pace for his matches. So you're going to see less of the spotting and the diving and all that type of stuff, and more of the slow, methodical strikes and the techniques and mat wrestling, things like that. So I was happily surprised to see fucking Randy Orton pull out all of the spots in this match. It was, I like to call it, like, the best version of Randy Orton is usually when he's full heel and he's just this disgusting, slimy asshole. Like, that is quintessential Randy Orton. And when he can pull that out of him, that's usually when you're going to see the best matches on the card. Hence why you saw him go against Super Cena Power for so long. I believe he had a match with Nakamura. Super Cena Power. Yeah. He had a match with Nakamura a year ago where he did this same exact thing, and everybody had to stop him. Like, Randy can still do this easily. He just decides when he wants to do this. Yep. And that's the thing about Randy. Like, I love him, but for the most part, his whole thing is that, like, yeah, I'll work a match, but it'll be good if I want it to be. If I don't feel like it, it's not going to be a good match.
I think it also depends on who he's working with. I think there's certain people he enjoys working with, and there's certain people that he doesn't. Like
no doubt.
And I think he's one of those guys that has enough sway to get in the ring a lot of the time with the people that he wants to be in the ring with. Another solid match that is, speaking of coming out of left field, that kind of came out of left field for me, was the Rowan versus Reigns match. Mainly because I expected that feud to end, and I expected that build-up to end with the Reigns win, as we both predicted. But Rowan not only gets the win, and here's where they kind of disappointed me, is that they went back to him working with Harper. They gave him Harper back.
Really?
Huh? Yeah, that disappointed me because I liked the Eric Rowan stretching out on his own. Nobody controls me, you know, I'm my own man type thing. I like them breaking him out as a singles character, not just to put him back in another tag team, you know, or with another group. Like, I liked him developing and growing as a singles character, but it is what it is.
That's not a bad point. Going into the match, like I liked it because, of course, it's exactly what you said. I wanted Eric Rowan to take it home, because it was just like, this guy's been around for how long now, and he's gotten how many chances like this? None. He's always been this sideline underboss sort of character, and I really liked seeing it. But I couldn't help myself. I'm a huge Luke Harper, Brody Lee mark. I love this guy. So, when he showed back up on the TV after all the reports that he wasn't going to be coming back, I marked out like a child. Not even going to lie.
It'd be like me if The Rock came out and actually wrestled somebody.
Exactly.
Like I told you, the Street Profits, Jaimel, I don't know if you've seen them before. They wrestle for NXT, and they've been on the main roster. They've got some charisma to them. But they won me over. I watched a match between them and two of the guys from Undisputed Era. Who was it?
You mean Red Dragon?
Yeah, Red Dragon.
Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly.
Yeah, and the guy, and I told Alpha here that they won me over the moment that dude, what was it? Dude went for people's elbow, right? Dropped his opponent, went for a people's elbow, got stopped, and then proceeded to follow that up with a rock bottom. And I was like, okay, you won me over at that moment. Like the fact that The Rock was okay, The Rock hasn't come back and said he's gonna lay the smackdown on your candy ass for using his moves tells me a lot. So go ahead with your bad selves. But their charisma really did win me over just watching them cut a couple of promos on Monday Night Raw. So they are pretty good guys, like, as far as charisma.
Did you see the little angle they had at Night of Champions? You didn't see that, the one with Booker T?
Oh yeah. that was tight. King Booker.
I love that.
It kind of disappointed me.
The shot of him screaming, I loved it.
It kind of disappointed me that they had that segment, but didn't have the King of the Ring finals at Night of Champions or Clash of Champions.
That would have made more sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Like, that segment would have fit better if right after that segment you lead right into the King of the Ring match. But they moved the King of the Ring match till Monday, which WWE has done that several times to me, and it kills me. They'll advertise a match at the pay-per-view all the way up to the week of the pay-per-view, and then all of a sudden the match has been moved to Monday Night Raw, and you don't find out till the night of the pay-per-view. And probably they didn't even find out till the night of the pay-per-view when they decided to do it. But it just cracks me up when I see that. I was explaining to somebody, just on an off note real quick before we move on with the rest of this card. I was explaining to somebody at the job. I was like, I talked to the people, and, I've had this conversation with both of you guys before about people saying wrestling is fake and so on and so forth. I'm like, look, you want to use the word scripted, blah, 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 blah. I was like, but the two things I like telling people the most is first and foremost, they actually do hit each other. Like I don't know about you, but I hear the smack of skin on skin. Like, they may hit each other in a way where they don't break each other's jaw, but that's not even true all the time. I'm like, but they try to be as safe as possible with each other. I was like, but the people who crack me up the most are the people that are like, oh, that wrestling ring's soft. Fool, there is a mat about a 1/4 inch thick on that, and the rest of that shit is hard ass wood. Like go throw yourself on a wrestling match and tell me how soft that is.
Now, admittedly, the WWE ring feels like a cloud. I will freely admit that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, comparably.
Yeah.
I remember our little old ring at APW, which, like, you're absolutely right. I mean, it was a 3/4 inch foam under canvas that sat on top of plywood, which sat on top of metal. Yes, that was a hard ring. But so comparably, you go to that WWE ring and the padding on the outside around the ring feels like what our ring would feel like in the ring. Gotcha. And then the ring inside the ring was soft. I mean, you still, a body slam is a body slam. A hip toss is a hip toss. You still don't want to jump and land on it. But I will tell you this. It made me feel very, very old when I visited the APW boot camp with the new ring in the gold mine over at Gold Rush Pro. And I bumped in the ring, and I was like, wow, this is you nice. Kids are spoiled. I was like, I could I could do this all day. You know, you guys got like some padding under here in a spring. That's really cool. But still, yeah, you don't want to get body slammed. But it is a little bit safer than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago.
All right. Nice to know we're moving forward. Making it safer for them boys and girls in that ring. All right, so let's see. Last matches to really touch on. Nakamura got the win over the Miz, which surprised me because I figured, like you were saying last week, it with all the talk about it being and this would have tied Miz with Jericho for his 9th reign. I thought this would have been the record breaker, but I guess according to what they were saying, this would have tied Miz. So,
WWE's for. They're totally petty enough to do that too.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Well, Jaimel, let's ask you about this. Me and him kind of talked about this a little while ago. The Miz is one of those rare wrestlers that it's weird seeing how he's come to be who he is. You know what I'm saying? From going from, like I said, I watched the season that he was on The Real World. I remember watching him run around the Real World house talking about how he wanted to be a WWF wrestler and with his little fake championship belt. And now he's like a 2-3-time WWE champion, an 8-time Intercontinental champion, like a 6-time tag champion, and one of the biggest personalities in WWE. It's weird, like thinking back to that origin to see where he's at now.
I mean, everybody is like, honestly, if you knew any wrestler personally who made it, you would say that same thing. Okay. I will say this. I honestly feel when it's all said and done, you know, maybe 25 years from now, Miz is going to be remembered as probably the best heel of the early 21st century. Yeah, buddy. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be the top heel of the early 21st century. I don't know anyone who has been more consistent than he has.
Yeah.
I don't really know. And that's just being honest. And at first I was like, I don't know, but this guy, the sheer love he has and his work rate is really high. And you have to give him credit for being a safe worker because he's never, I mean, everybody like that promo he and Daniel Bryan cut on each other on that after show one time where he was talking about how, you know, hey, I never got hurt. I mean, the best promos have a little bit of truth to them, and he's right. Yeah. Like for him to have so many high profile matches, and keep in mind this is a guy who was a mid-card or Intercontinental champion, so that means he's on TV and he's working non-televised events. So he's wrestling like maybe 4 or 5 times a week and doing appearances and whatnot, and he's never had a major injury. That's you know, or my mom would call that a blessing, and I call it a really high work rate. That's smart wrestling. So, yeah, man, when it's all said and done, his origins may have been real humble and it may be really weird, but where he's at now, man, when it's all said and done, people are probably going to say he's the greatest heel of maybe the first 15, 20 years of this decade, of this century, excuse me.
And you know, I can see that argument.
Never heard it better.
Definitely see that. Yeah, I can see the argument. Now, mind you, he wouldn't. I can't call him my favorite heel because we all know, as I've mentioned a billion times, my favorite heel is Samoa Joe. But I can definitely see that. You know what I'm saying? Like when I think about the Miz's career, like I've said it multiple times. Like I've said it to you, Jaimel. I think I've said it to you, Alpha, and I said it all the time to your boy Cole. As soon as I begin to understand what a heel's job was, like as soon as I started digging into that side of the wrestling business, I began to appreciate all the guys that made me hate them as a kid. I began to appreciate all those guys, you know, like the Yokozunas and the Mr. Fujis that just really made me grr at my TV screen. You know, and I began to appreciate it. And when I think back over the Miz's career, he has consistently been one of the best heels in the business throughout his entire career. So I can definitely go with that. But this was a time where I wanted to see him get the title, not because I don't like Nakamura as the whatchamacallit, but just even by putting Sami Zayn with him, it doesn't seem like they're doing anything with Nakamura. So to me, it was just like, I'd rather see it on Miz, because at least then they do something with it.
Yeah, I don't think they understand how to use people who don't speak English.
Yeah, they truly don't. Asuka was a big thing in WWE for a little bit, but now like they don't know really what to do with
I'm
her.
angry.
Yeah,
Don't get me started on that one. I'm angry.
They should be tag team champs right now. They truly should. The Kabuki Warriors should be tag team champs right now.
Look, man, I'm not even gonna lie. If this was the right timeline, we would have never had Becky 2 belts, and it would have been Asuka 2 belts. All right. This is the wrong timeline.
You're in the
This is
wrong
the one where
timeline.
Asuka lost the streak. Damn it.
Damn you, Barry. Damn you, Barry Allen.
Flashpoint.
Oh man. But yeah, like I agree. Like I thought it was extremely bad writing, and that's back before Paulie Dangerously and all them took over. I thought it was extremely bad writing to have her streak end, like without a championship reign attached to it other than the NXT title. Like they brought her in, she didn't lose for almost 2 years on the main roster, and then you have her lose to Charlotte when she finally gets the championship match that everybody knows she deserves. Like, yeah, that was just bad writing. Like, yeah, like that.
Why?
It made no sense. Like, it made literally no sense to me. About as much as that Mia Yim character does on NXT. But let's talk a little bit about that before we start wrapping up wrestling. NXT is making the move to USA. Is this a good or a bad sign? Jaimel, you can take this question, and Alpha, you can follow up. That WWE is choosing to put NXT up against AEW instead of moving a Raw or a SmackDown to Wednesday night. So your thoughts on NXT facing off on the Wednesday Night Wars?
I think it's good for AEW. I don't know that it's good for WWE though.
Okay.
I think long term, because the bigger, what's bigger than the Wednesday war is the streaming wars, right? Everybody's got their apps. They want people to watch their apps. NXT and 205 Live are probably the most consistent reason to watch the WWE app.
Yes.
And now you're going to give it away on. Now you're going to give it away on television. So I think that's a bad look for NXT. You can't say like, oh, these guys aren't on our level, and we're not going to even mess with them. We don't care, You're right, because like that was the central reaction. AEW says, hey, we're going to be on television, and then Triple H and Vince McMahon, their response was pretty much lions don't concern themselves with about the sheep, right? That's basically the way they acted.
Yeah.
But then you take it off, like let's be honest, their most consistently good product, at least according to the people who watch it, is NXT. Yes. So you're taking that off your flagship program off your app, and you're putting it up against these people. That to me says, hey, we're worried about them. So what you did is you actually had the opposite effect. You just called it the Wednesday Night Wars. You're automatically putting AEW. They haven't done one show yet, and you're putting them on the same level in your mind with WWE. Yeah. They legitimized them. So for me, if I thought I wasn't worried about something, I would totally ignore them. I wouldn't legitimize them by making people pick between our products. Like they like AEW specifically chose Wednesday because they're like, oh, we don't want to be compared to WWE. We're gonna go on a night that you're not on, right? And then they could have left it. They could have left it completely alone, right? But instead, they're coming after them. So, and I don't think it's gonna work because all AEW doesn't have to win this. They just have to have a good showing, right? Like all they have to do is like be comparable. So like you never want to punch down because you have everything to lose. And what worries me is objectively, Vince McMahon is a competitor. If AEW outdraws NXT for even like a week or two, he's going to come in and try to fix it. And then, as far from what I understand by people who watch NXT regularly, that would destroy everything that they like about NXT.
Yes.
So it could be a double loss for WWE. Like WWE is never going to go anywhere. They're a corporate entity now, and they're publicly traded. So Vince McMahon could die and WWE would still keep chugging right along.
Yeah.
So they're never going to go away, but it could really seriously damage them if they don't if they don't crush AEW. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to crush them.
Well, I think that the AEW. I've said this. I said, well, first and foremost, I guess if you're going to put anything up against AEW, you might as well put your best in-ring product. And that's the sad thing to me, is what I was hoping that AEW's television show would do would be to force them to make SmackDown and Raw better products to compete. You know what I'm saying? Not just bring up, basically, to me, it's like a Major League Baseball team, instead of developing the guys that they have on the roster, they just waive somebody and bring up their number one prospect and hope that he'll invigorate, the squad enough for them to get on a winning streak. They're taking what's basically their best product in NXT and throwing it up there against AEW. But I think the reason why NXT was chosen is because of the three things. NXT is the best in-ring product, and that's what they feel. And I think if they're true with themselves, I'm sorry to say this. Like, I know what Seth Rollins said and all, and AEW, just like TNA did in its heyday, has a better in-ring product than what WWE is putting out. And I think that's where WWE now. I agree with you that where it's going to end up being the double loss is that there's going to be a week or two where AEW is going to be hot at the very beginning, and they're going to and then Vince is going to want to step in and take over and just end up ruining the product. Because the whole thing that makes that product special is the fact that Vince has absolutely nothing to do with it. That's all Tripp and Sean and all them boys. And yeah.
Right.
We'll see how it happens. Alpha, your thoughts on the Wednesday Night Wars?
Of course. I think that it's called that, not for the idea that, it's WWE has dubbed AEW the enemy like multiple times, as you've said. They've put them on that pedestal at this point.
Yeah.
Of course, AEW was always going to be the one that everybody chanted against Vince McMahon's big house of big sweaty men.
Yeah.
But it's also because of, I believe it's the fan base that surrounds both NXT and AEW, that sort of promotion. And I brought this up in the recording that we didn't get to work with, but it's the fact that it's the hardcore fans, I'd say.
Yeah.
The people who watch NXT every week, the people who keep up with the shows, the people who go when they come to the smaller venues in their towns, those are hardcore wrestling fans. That's not the casual audience. Yeah. The issue is that WWE's current main roster products can't pull that same fan base. So the closest that they have to the people who, in the same light, are flying themselves out to all the little AEW shows that are going on, checking out the Jericho podcast, doing all that stuff, buying the Bullet Club shirts, those are the same hardcore fans.
Yeah.
Those fans are essentially in the same league, as I would say. And so WWE recognizing the fact that the hardcore audience isn't going anywhere near their main roster product as much as they would be the NXT product, that's all they have to push forward against AEW if they're going to push back in any way, shape, or form, which we know they all will because it's fucking Vince.
Yep.
But like you said before, I'm glad it's happening because it's going to bring out the best wrestling above all else. And
that's what I've always said was like when WWF and WCW were in their heyday, the wrestling fans won. When they were in their heyday of going at it against each other, the fans were the one that won. The fans were the one that got to see the great matches. The fans were the one that got to see these great personalities come out of these wars. The fans won. And to recreate that by giving WWE some actual competition would be nice. To see that happen again to where we can see WWE gets pushed to its limits and gets to a point where we're seeing quality matches day in and day out and quality promos and things to remember. I would love to see that again. So, all right, Alpha, do you have a wrestler to watch for this week, or do you want to use the same one you used last time with the episode that never made
I'm just going to use that same one.
Go for it,
friend. Sir. Sweet. As per usual, I have the wrestler of the week, and looking back, I've noticed that I've chosen a lot of smaller guys there hasn't been a lot so far, but I look back and I see Darby Allin and Jungle Boy specifically, and I'm thinking that, like you said, even though wrestling is in a state of it's not as much big men as much as it is little men anymore, I need a big man, and I need Brody King.
There you go.
If you haven't heard of Brody King, do yourself a favor and check him out. In terms of looks, anybody who's a fan of the current WWE product will notice the fact that he's just a big, pudgy Aleister Black. And, that's not a bad thing. But in terms of looks, it's the same tattoos, the same color of trunks, the hair. He's just a big Aleister Black. But, of course, moveset is nothing alike because he is substantially larger. Good matches all around. He had an amazing match with Darby Allin, PWG Hand of Doom a while back. And it was a hardcore match. And at one point, they introduced a fucking skateboard. And it was great. Do yourself a favor. Check out Brody King. Brody King gets the alpha stamp of approval for this week.
There you go.
Thank you.
So Brody King, look him up on YouTube and see what he's all about. He comes alpha approved. All right, and I would like to thank our special guest who hung with us for the whole show. Took an hour and a half out of his day to hang with us. Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. Jaimel, appreciate you being on the show, brother.
Hey, man, it was my pleasure. It was great to hang out with you both. That was a lot of fun.
For sure. We'll have to do this again. And you have to let us know the next con that you're planning on being at, and we'll have to come out and talk to some of the NPC fans. Get them on the show, too.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, just look at our Facebook page, NPC Comics, or our website, npccomics.plural.com. NPC Comics, and all of our upcoming events are listed there.
Well, there you go. Check them out, and you can find us on Spreaker.com. And we should be back this upcoming Sunday, correct, Alpha? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We should be back this upcoming Sunday to talk more AEW, NXT, WWE, and everything, comic books and pop culture. As well, we should have, who else? We should have Dirty Talk 101 going on later on tonight. We should have... Miss Toy with Lovely Radio on Thursday. Then it comes back around to me, Double K's Classroom. This week I'm talking fantasy football on Friday night. And then Saturday we got Mr. Deacon. Sunday we have Inspiration Radio in the morning. Brick House at noon. West Coast Bias will be back for its second episode recently on Sunday as well to talk, you'll just tune in and find out. West Coast Bias is always a wild ride. I want to say, and then at 5 we'll be back with the Cheap Pop Podcast, and then at 8 we should be back with MBT Deuce. So we got a full lineup on Sunday and a bunch of lineups spotted throughout the week. So keep in touch with us right here at the 486 Presents Radio Network. This has been the Cheap Pop Podcast. We'll catch y'all on Sunday. Peace.
Yeah, boy.